let us talk a bit about this magnificent night. I always say, Eden have many magnificent days, but they have two special magnificent nights. Leil Kol Nidrei and Leil Seder. Very different in essence. But the combination of these two magnificent nights is the essence and the tamsis of Avodas Ukeil, Dechilu and Rechimu, Ahavo and Yira. Leil Kol Nidrei is Yira, Emas Yoim Hadin, the essence of Koved Rosh. Leil Seder, Lailo Ki Yom Yoyom. It is all about Ahavo. So these two nights together are the essence of Avodas Ukeil. People struggle what to make of the Haggadah. Haggadah Shel Pesach seems to be a compilation of various different mamorim without Seder. What is it? Does it have structure? And structure is so important. When I was a young boy, one of my very first inspirations was the Ramchal. And I started learning Sifra Ramchal. I was young, and I don't think I really understood the depth of Torah's Ramchal. But I was so moved and inspired by the Seder, by the structure. Everything in the Ramchal is so beautiful and so mesuda, so orderly. And he has the famous mashal of the forest and the botanical garden. And he says, you might have the same plants and the same flowers in the forest. But in the botanical garden, it is the Seder that makes the difference, that brings out the beauty of what you see. And I think Seder HaHaggadah is so magnificently structured, and Anshe Knesset Agdola Beruach HaKodesh U'Ba'omek Binasam. Haggadah Shel Pesach has three parts, 1, 2, and 3. The first section starts off with the most fundamental, simple question that every child would ask. Ma nishtana alayla azeh mekol haleilos. What is this all about? Why is this night different than all the others? And then we start to explain. Matchel begnus u'mesayim b'shvach. Machloikes Rav and Shmuel. Which gnus and which shevach? Rav says, Metchila oivda avodah zorah hoyu avoseinu. It's about ruchnius. Shmuel says, no. It's about freedom. Avodah mayinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu etzienu lechelus. Rabbeinu Hananel says, we do both. And that's the Rambam. And that's the Minhag Kol Beis Yisrael. The Ritvo explains it's not even a Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. The Machlokes is only Mugdam and Meuchar. Which first, which second. But both agree that we need to focus on both spiritual aliyah and physical salvation. So the night begins with Avodah Mayinu as a response to the question Ma nishtana. And the first part of the Haggadah is a compilation of Mamorim, how important it is, the mitzvah of Sipi Yetzias Mitzrayim. And how important it is that everyone, afilu kolona chachomim v'kolona navonim, we all need to tell the story. And Gedolei Atanoim, the greatest of our sages, told the story. So the first section, the last paragraph is V'hi sha'amdo lavoseinu v'lonu. Shelo yechad b'lvad omed aleinu l'chaloseinu v'shebekal dor v'dor v'kodesh Baruch Hu matzilenu. And that is why it is important to tell the story. It's not only about remembering the past. It is about deriving chizuk for the present and for days to come. Because our tzaras are not over. We are in Golus. And we need this chizuk. כמו שכוסף הרמב"ן בסוף פרשס בוי. Why do we need to remember יציאת מצרים? כי מן הניסים הגדולים והמפורסמים עוד המועדה בניסים הנסתורים שהם יסוד כל התורה כולו. אין לנו חלק בתורס מוישה. עד שנדע שכל דבורנו ומקרנו הם ניסים, אין בהם טבע ומנהגו של עולם. So when we quote the Ramban, people usually understand that nature is a miracle. The Ramban doesn't really mean nature. Kol dvorenu v'mikrenu. He means our story. The story of the Jews is one miracle. And when we remember the Nisim HaGedolim v'Mefarsamim, we believe in the Nisim HaNistorim. We are a miraculous people. Am Yisrael has nothing to do with Teva. I always say, in the course of human events, in the course of history, we should have been 2 or 3 pages in history books. Somewhere between the Roman Empire and ancient Troy, it would be said, we would read, there were a people that called themselves the Jews. They claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs. You know who the patriarchs were, yeah? They claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs, of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They rose to prominence when their dynamic and charismatic leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, brought them out of bondage and made them a free people. And they sank into oblivion when their temple was destroyed, so-and-so BC or AC or whatever it is. That would be nature. That would be natural. But we're not part of history books. We're alive and we're thriving. And miraculously, we're doing quite well. 300 years ago, Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes in Sulam Beis El, in his introduction to his magnificent Seder, Sha'arei Shamayim. My Rebbe, the Klosenberger Rebbe, used to quote this Rabbi Yaakov Emden very often. Chai Roishi, that is an expression of a shavua. Kasher ani mizboinem b'kiyum klal Yisrael b'gol aseh achaz ben shivim ze'evim. When I just think about the fact that we exist, Godel hanes hazeh b'yeinai, yoiseh mekol hanisim shenasu lavasenu b'Mitzrayim al hayam u'b'Eretz Yisrael. The fact that we're around is a greater miracle than Aseres HaMakas and Kriyas Yam Suf and Ma'amad Har Sinai. He wrote that 300 years ago, and I wonder, what would he write today? What have we been through in the last 300 years? What terrible nisyonis in ruchnius and physical. The greatest tragedy, the greatest homicide in the history of the world was the Shoah. Nobody believed 80 years ago. My parents were both survivors. My Rebbe was the ultimate survivor, the Klosenberger Rebbe that lost his wife and his entire family, 11 children. And I spoke to them so many times. No one believed 80 years ago that 80 years down the line, this is how we will be. Coming back to our promised Holy Land after 2,000 years, livnois, lihibonois, to spread Torah in the entire world. I was in Mexico 2 weeks ago. I was in Brazil a month and a half ago. Wherever you come in the world today, Yiddishkeit is thriving and growing and prospering. And so many people are coming back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is an amazing time, an amazing age. And this is a miracle. What would Rabbi Yaakov Emden write today? I could only imagine he would write, I just guess, because what else could he write? If 300 years ago he wrote, I don't like quoting Goyim, but sometimes it's important. 100 years before Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the story goes, there was a French philosopher and mathematician, very well known, Blaise Pascal. And the king of France asked him, do you have scientific proof that HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists? Scientific proof. And Pascal said, yes. One word, the Jews. The Jews prove that someone up there is watching over them. They shouldn't be around. And they are. And that was 400 years ago. מן הניסים הגדולים והמפורסמים עוד המועד בניסים הנסתוריים שהם יסוד כל התורה כולו. So in the first part of the Haggadah, it is just to stress how important this is to keep the story alive, doir achar doir, to tell the story of Nisim v'Neflois, because we will need these stories in every generation. שבכל דויר ודויר עומדם עלינו לחלויסנו והקדוש ברוך הוא מצילנו מיודם. We need to remember, because מן הניסים הגדולים והמפורסמים עוד המועד בניסים הנסתוריים. I said so many times in the past 17 months, in these painful 17 months, not all of us feel the pain. Thousands of young people, most of them soldiers, lost their lives. Tens of thousands injured. Many amputees. I know some of them that lost their eyesight. And there are still a hostage out there. Begait Salmoves. This was such a painful time. But we also saw every day, we saw every day, we've been seeing Nisim Nistorim every day. So I said so many times how wonderful it would be if there would be breaking news in all the outlets. Miraculously, all the waters in Gaza and in Lebanon turned red. And the greatest chemists analyzed the water, and they said, it's actually blood. And nobody understands, nobody could figure out how this happened. And the world is still grappling with this crazy phenomena. New breaking news. A zillion frogs came out of nowhere, and they overran Lebanon and Gaza, totally disrupting communications and transportations and every social activity. And that one frog crossed the Lebanese border into Israel. It didn't happen, Rabbi Say. And don't expect it to happen tomorrow, because it won't. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes in his Torah, V'unoichi haster asti aponai b'yoim hahu. But you need to open your eyes and believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching over us. And that is why it is important to tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, to keep the story alive, and from one generation to the other. And that is why the last paragraph of the first chelek of Haggadah is Vehi she'amdo la'avoseinu v'lanu. And that is why we need to tell the story. And then, Tzei Ulamad is the second part. That is actually the story. So the Mishnah says, Daf Kuf Tezayin Psochim, V'doireish ma'arami oivet ovi. This is not only read, doireish. And Chazal explained 4 psukim in Mikra Bekurim. This is the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It starts when Yaakov and Lavan part, and then a famine hits the land. Reluctantly, Yaakov goes down to Eretz Mitzrayim. The story of Golos Mitzrayim, of Shiabud, of slavery, and of redemption. And that is when we tell about Aseres HaMakos. And that is the second part of the Haggadah, the most important part. That is where you need to focus. Focus and tell the story and elaborate. Stress the Nisim. Mitzvah shel Torah l'saper b'Nisim v'Neflois. And then, part number 2 ends with Pesach Matzah v'Moroi. And then lefichach anachnu chayovim la'odos. And then, after telling the story, you need to sing the praise. Every day in the morning, how do we start off our day? Moida ani lefonecha melech chai v'kayim, shechzarto bi nishmos yibachem lo. I recently gave a shmus in my koilel, and I asked, What do we need to bear in mind when we say Moida ani lefanecha? Hoda'ah or hodaya? Admission or gratitude? In Lashon Kodesh, Moida has two interpretations. Did you ever learn the sugi of Moida b'miktzas? Mona li biyadcha, en lecha biyodi elecha mishim. That's not gratitude. You got alone, you can't say thank you. Yena thank you. He denies 50% of the claim. That is admission. So when we say Moida ani lefanecha, is that admission or gratitude? And I say it is both. Why do I say it's both? This nusach Moida ani lefanecha melech chai v'kaim shechzarto b'nishmos is nowhere to be found in Bavli, Yerushalmi, Rambam, Tur, Shulchan Aruch, nowhere. The very first source is Seder Hayom for Reb Moshe ben Mochia. According to the Gemara in Brochas Daf Samach, Rambam, Tur Shulchan Aruch Mem Vav. When you open your eyes in the morning, what are you supposed to say? Elokai, neshama shenosata b'toheroi. Why don't we do so? The Tur quotes his father Darash, and it's already in Sefer Hayir of Rabbeinu Yoina. Because our hands in the morning are not toher, and we can't say Shem Shemayim before Natilas Yadayim. And that is why we say Moida ani lefanecha, which doesn't have Shem Hashem. So it is clear to me that Moida ani lefanecha is an abbreviation, a kitzur of Elokai Neshama. It must be that way. So what do we say in Elokai Neshama? Elokai Neshama shenatato b'toheroi, ato berosa, ato yitzarto. So it starts with admission, with recognition, with acknowledgement. Atu berosa, atu yetzarta, atu nafachta bi, v'ata osadet meni. And then we say, Kol zman shana shoma bekir be'moid ani lefonecha. And then admission must bring to gratitude. So when we say moida ani in the morning, it is first of all admission, recognition. You open your eyes in the morning, think about it. Don't take it for granted. Some people go to sleep by night and they do not wake up in the morning. The reason you woke up this morning is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided he deserves another day. That is why I opened my eyes in the morning. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided you deserve another day. Let us see how he will use this day. Will he do tshuva? Will he dedicate this day la'avdai or l'shamroi? Don't take it for granted. It's not to be taken for granted. Moed ani lefonecha, I acknowledge, I recognize, I admit, it is you. And then, once again, moed ani, thank you Hashem. And recognition needs to bring to admission and to gratitude. Kosav Ramban, the very same Ramban I quoted before. Tachlis hayetzira harishayna. Ve'ein el elyoin chafetz betachtoinim. Ki im sheyeda ha'adam v'yodeh le'eloikav shebara'oi. The Ramban uses two words, sheyeda v'sheyodeh. He should recognize, acknowledge, and say thank you. So moida ani means both. I'm aware, Rabbeinu Shalom, it is you that decided to give me another day, and therefore, thank you Hashem. And that is Elokai Neshama shenotato bi. And that is why part number 2 of the Haggadah leads to part number 3. After we tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, it is only natural. Lefichach anachnu chayovim lahoides ulahalel ulishabeach. And that is Hallel and Hallel HaGadol, and that is the third part of the Haggadah. Hayodea ve'eineno modeh rosho. Hamodeh ve'eino yodea shoito. So, sheyeda ha'odam v'yodeh le'eloikav shebaroi. And that is what the Seder is all about. Part number 1 is just stressing the importance. And why is it important? It is important to remember because we will have nisyonos. And not always will HaKadosh Baruch Hu be there making miraculous nisim l'mala mederech hateva for the whole world to see. No. We will need to thrive on nisim nistorim. Not always will we see nisim gluyim. And that is why we need to keep the story alive. And then we tell the story of Yitzias M'Mayim, and Aseres HaMakas, and Kriyas Yamsef, and all the miracles. And then finally, and that is what the Leila Seder is all about. But I say, when Pesach comes around, we say Rabbeinu Shalom, we believe in the Nisim HaNistorim. We see them, we feel them. But maybe time has come for some Nisim Gluyim as well. For hundreds of years, we're thriving on Nisim Nistorim. Ad Mosai. Till when, Rabbeinu Shalom? Maybe time has come for some Nisim Gluyim. We long for those Nisim. אנחנו מתגעגעים לקצת ניסים גלויים. יהי רצון, we should be זויכה. כי ימייצאיסכם מארץ מצרים ערנו נפלויס. Let's see some ניסים גלויים. שיתקיים בנו דברי הנביא, כי עין בעין יראו בשוב השם ציון, ונגלו כבוד השם. For the whole world to see. וראו כל בוסו יחדו, כי פי השם דיבר. We should be zoiche to be as Mashiach Tzidkenu, to binyan beis hamikdash, v'sham noichal, men apsochim v'men azvochem, shiagi adom amalkiyem esbachacho b'meiru v'yomeinu amen.